Gordon Chang, appreciate you coming on. So a number of banks in China's Henan province, they're not letting people withdraw money. A lot of people angry about this. Up to $1.5 billion in deposits could be in there. Now, Gordon, what is going on here? Why are Chinese banks not letting people take their money out?
China's going through a debt crisis. And part of that debt crisis is that the banks are illiquid. They have lent money to failing property developers and to others, and they just don't have the cash to pay back depositors. So this is now a crisis. We can see, for instance, that China's large property developers like Evergrande, but also others, are defaulting. Evergrande, for instance, had something like $305 billion in obligations. The other big property developers, although not nearly as indebted, basically can't pay back their debts anyway. The country as a whole is too much debt. We don't know exactly how much, Don, but if you were to say maybe 350% of gross domestic product, that probably would be close, could even be 400%. China is just not in a position to pay back whatever the amount is. And, it's very interesting, Don, that the protests that we saw in Henan, in Zhengzhou, it wasn't in front of a particular bank. It was in front of the People's Bank of China, which is the central bank. So people understand that the crisis is not just any one institution. It's a crisis which is systemic. We know that banks in other provinces have defaulted, for instance, in Jiangsu. So yes, it's not just located in one province. It's a problem throughout central and eastern China.
How do you feel about how Chinese police handle the protests? Reports are saying people are being beaten, they're being injured.
This is the typical playbook of the Communist Party, to intimidate, to use force. And we can see that this will occur in the future because these banks can't pay back. Beijing doesn't have an answer. So it will try to use all means possible that are coercive.
Now, it doesn't really seem fair to me. I mean, this is their money. They have every right to protest, don't they? What crime have they committed?
They've committed no crime, of course. But then again, law is not important in the People's Republic. It's the word of the party. And the party generally believes, look, the party line is that this money's not yours. It's our money. And we're going to do what we want with it. So there's a fundamental misperception between the people and the party.
If this is how Chinese police are handling this every single time, it doesn't look good for the Communist Party going forward.
No, it doesn't. But the party right now has no economic answers. At some point, I suppose they could print money, but China already has an inflation problem. So that's not going to be a long-term solution. This is an issue going forward. There's just not enough liquidity in the Chinese banking system. And this is not just in some faraway province. We're seeing this in Shanghai itself. So, for instance, Shanghai banks have severe restrictions on the amount of withdrawals. People are not able to get access to their money. There are no solutions within the confines of Communist Party ideology. We have seen under Xi Jinping moving towards a state model. We have these zero COVID policies, and we have too much debt. And you put all this together, and it means that the Chinese economy isn't growing at the reported rates. And I think that eventually it will engulf the regime. They've been able to put off crises for a very long time, Don, and now we are probably seeing the reckoning.
This looks kind of grim for the Chinese regime. Do you think their downfall may be the economic aspect?
This could really be the trigger for the failure of the Communist Party. One can argue about, was this COVID related or COVID caused? I don't think so. I think this was a debt crisis that's been there for quite some time. It's been masked because the Communist Party has been able to obtain money from the outside. It's been masked because they've incurred debt, but now they are running out of room what to do. And it's not helped by Xi Jinping, who has these absurd notions about how the Chinese economy and the banking system should work. It just doesn't. He doesn't look at reality. And because of that, the Communist Party can't come up with the solutions that would save it.
I see. Well, Gordon Chang, thank you very much for coming on again.
Thank you so much, Tom.